The global food crisis is no longer a distant possibility or a future concern for economists to discuss in studies and notes to investors. It's happening right now. Its effects are already visible, and they're causing lots of stress and pain for millions of people around the world. This crisis is gonna have a major impact on the life of every single person on the face of the planet, including you and your family. The information we're about to share is extremely important and quite alarming. But before entering today's discussion, please don't forget, leave a thumbs up, subscribe to stay updated with our future important videos. Forecasts about an extensive shortage of food and other basic resources aren't new. For years and years, experts have been warning this was gonna happen. In recent months, we've also published a number of videos exposing many of the catalysts aggravating all this crisis across the globe. Several headlines out there were alerting about a supply chain breakdown way before the conflict between Russia and Ukraine broke out. But still, none of these warnings provoked a significant reaction amongst the public. Perhaps people thought it was an exaggeration. But this is officially where we are now. The global food crisis has become undeniable, and even the US government is now admitting that even more food shortages are coming in the next couple of months. With sanctions and supply chain disruptions pushing consumer prices to soar as oil and commodity prices face a massive spike, increased costs of gas and diesel are also weighing on the cost of food and sparking fears that the world is on the verge of a horrifying hunger crisis. And this time, the United States is not gonna be immune. In fact, in a press conference held in Brussels a few days ago, President Joe Biden confirmed the seriousness of the issue. Biden has admitted for the first time that we're going to experience food shortages as a result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It's gonna be real, Biden stated. The price of the sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well, he stressed. As Bloomberg highlighted in a recent article, both Ukraine and Russia are major producers of grains, wheat in particular. Kyiv's government has already warned that the country's planting and harvest have been severely disrupted by the Russian aggression. On the same note, the Federalist Sean Davis aptly reminded that Biden's policies may significantly worsen the U.S. food supply chain crisis and the slowdown in domestic production. He says, "We're about to face massive energy and food shortages, and Biden's solution is to ban drilling and put expensive and inefficient solar panels and windmills on what's left of American farmland that hasn't been bought up by China or BlackRock," he wrote. At the same time, NATO has released its official statement about the Ukraine crisis. "We, the heads of state and government of the 30 NATO allies, have met today to address Russia's aggression against Ukraine, the gravest threat to security in decades," the statement posted to the organization's website begins. Russia's attack against Ukraine has shattered the peace and is causing enormous human suffering and destruction, it continued, adding that the invasion makes the world less safe, and further condemned the Russian leader's rhetoric as irresponsible and destabilizing. Even though Biden suggested at the G7 summit that he and the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau were discussing about increasing both nations' agricultural production partnership to try and make up for the shortages, Canada has been struggling with food supply shortfalls too, since a series of natural disasters have led to the destruction of millions of acres of their crops last year. That's why Biden is also urging all nations, including those in Europe, to drop trade restrictions that halt exports of food. However, things aren't any better in Europe. Believe it or not, conditions are so chaotic on European food supply chains that some developed nations are actually considering adopting some sort of food stamp system as prices rise to historic levels. Last week, after a major commodities trading company said diesel is in such short supply it may soon have to be rationed, France's government announced plans to implement food vouchers to help residents afford to eat. French President Emmanuel Macron said the measure is an attempt to help middle and low-income families afford to eat, calling the problem a worldwide food crisis. Macron said in an interview on Tuesday, "I want to put in place a food voucher system to help the most modern households and the middle class facing these additional costs." Meanwhile, Ukrainians are getting increasingly desperate as they run out of food and they run out of medicine. Many cities in the country have less than 4 days' worth of food less, the aid agency Mercy Corps revealed, warning that the humanitarian system in the country is entirely broken down. At least 70% of the population of Kharkiv and Sumy is entirely dependent on aid, estimated Steve Gordon, Mercy Corps Ukraine Humanitarian Response Advisor. Food and medical supplies have almost run out in the southern Ukrainian city of Kherson, according to the spokesperson for Ukraine's Foreign Ministry, Oleg Nikolenko. And as gas prices continue to surge, the world's fertilizer supply continues to collapse. Consequently, the prices of wheat, corn, vegetable oils, and soybean have hit new record highs, a particularly troubling outcome for countries already struggling with food insecurity. On Wednesday, rampant food inflation forced authorities in Egypt to adjust the price of bread to limit price hikes caused by supply chain disruptions. The costs of basic food supplies have jumped by as much as 25% in the nation over the past month. Even the UK is coming up with new measures to help shoppers cope with soaring prices. The government will start cutting taxes to help keep fuel affordable. Finance Minister or Chancellor of the Exchequer Rishi Sunak said he would cut gas and diesel taxes for 1 year. Authorities will also raise the income threshold for a payroll tax for about 30 million people. The extraordinary shock waves triggered by the sanctions on the Russian economy have even reached the world's biggest economy. In the United States, food prices have recorded the largest monthly increase last month, with the overall increase in food prices nearing 8%, the biggest jump since July 1981. Over the past 5 decades, America has unwisely become very reliant on the rest of the world for the production of food, fertilizer, and many things. That has effectively put us in a very vulnerable position. Many Americans still don't realize that when we sanction other nations, we are also sanctioning ourselves, especially when that nation is one of the world's most important food and fertilizer producers. The economic fallout from the Russia and Ukraine crisis will continue to spill over to the rest of the globe, and the U.S. economy will suffer dire consequences too. According to new estimates shared by Wells Fargo and Goldman Sachs, the chance of an economic recession in the U.S. has risen from 35 to 50% this year as global growth shrinks. Adding fuel to the fire, domestic food production is being disrupted by a shortage of fertilizer and skyrocketing prices. With Russia as a top fertilizer exporter, prices have shot to record highs in a 30-day span. According to the American Farm Bureau Federation, fertilizer costs have risen as much as 300% in some areas, which is adding significant pressure to farmers' pocketbooks. For small farmers, the situation has been an absolute nightmare. They're being forced to choose between planting without fertilizer and risk losing their crops and their money, or not planting at all. This dilemma will inevitably result in reduced agricultural production, meaning that this year a lot less food will be grown in America. In some cases, farmers who are still willing to pay higher prices for fertilizer are not able to get it delivered at all. There's simply not enough supply for everyone, said Clark Gregory, an Iowa farmer who grows hay for his livestock operation. He said, "There's no way the math can hold on this. I can't imagine it's enough." Corn and soybean farmer John Bakehouse echoed similar concerns about declining fertilizer supplies. For the first time, we're talking about it's simply not available. Fertilizer is simply not available. Some chemicals are simply not available. For the first time, you kind of recognize you're standing on a three-legged stool with one of the legs starting to weaken, Bakehouse said. The farmer explains that the biggest problem is timing. It's already too late to consider alternative forms of fertilizer for crops as the planting season begins. Other farmers have indicated that it might be time to get out of the farming business, since it's not just commodity and fertilizer prices, but other input price increases such as diesel fuel. I think there will be a lot of people pulling out, a lot of bankruptcies and foreclosures, Gregory added. On top of all this, there are still other serious disasters that are also threatening food production. A new outbreak of bird flu continues to escalate in the U.S. Last Tuesday, the Nebraska Department of Agriculture announced that it has confirmed a case of the highly contagious bird flu in a commercial flock of 570,000 broiler chickens, and that all the birds will have to be humanely depopulated and disposed of. HPAI is a highly contagious virus that spreads easily among birds through nasal and eye secretions, as well as manure, the NDA said. The virus can be spread in various ways from flock to flock, including by wild birds, through contact with infected poultry, by equipment, and on the clothing and the shoes of caretakers. So far, over 12 million chickens and turkeys had to be put down in the U.S. this year as a result of this devastating outbreak. This means that consumers will consequently have to pay much higher prices for chicken, turkey, eggs, and also meat in the next few weeks and months. The perfect storm of factors is only getting worse and scarier. Global leaders cannot even deny it anymore. Hundreds of millions of people will experience food insecurity, hunger, or famine by the end of this year. And if you have not been paying much attention to this issue until this point, you need to wake up, because this is the real deal, and things are changing fast. If you think food prices are high right now, you'll be shocked when you find out that they're not going to get lower than this for decades. We should act while we can, because many more challenges are likely to emerge soon. Thank you for watching this video. We hope it's informative. Please subscribe. We look forward to your comments underneath this video.